I was raised in a very religious household. And so there was a lot of sexual shame growing up. And I've always been a very horny person. And so there was a huge conflict within me, as a child and adolescent. So, I often joke that I'm not an actual sex coach, I'm a communication coach. Because essentially, a lot of people are just so scared to tell their partners the truth of how they
Yeah.
feel, whether they like something or not, right? And those conversations are the ones that really create all of the transformation in your intimate life. Someone says, I'm insecure about what my vulva looks like. Well, we got to look at your vulva then. Let's take out a mirror and look at her and get familiar with her smell, familiar with how she looks. So when
Mm.
someone's going down on you, you don't feel insecure, right?
Welcome back to the Sex and Space podcast. Very excited to be joined today by Jocelyn. So welcome, Jocelyn.
Hello.
Um, and I think for our listeners, if they perhaps don't know who you are and what you do, could you maybe kick things off just by giving us a little introduction to yourself?
Of course. Hi, my name is Jocelyn. I am a sexual empowerment coach and sex educator. Essentially, I support individuals in having better sex lives, healthier sex lives, heal shame, and express themselves authentically in the bedroom and beyond.
And how did you get into a job like this, into this kind of career path?
It's a whole story. So it all started when I was born. I was raised in a very religious household. And so there was a lot of sexual shame growing up. And I've always been a very horny person. And so there was a huge conflict within me, as a child and adolescent. And when I was 16, I wanted to be a nun. I was very, very religious. But then when I was 18 years old, I left the Catholic Church, started college, and went on my very first sexual awakening journey. And I was just like, who the hell said that sex is bad? Sex is
Mm.
amazing. And when I was 20 years old, I became a sex educator. And that's when I thought, oh my God, I want to help other people embrace their sexualities and feel confident in their bodies, because giving myself the gift of having, healed all my sexual shame was just
Mhm.
one of the most beautiful gifts I could have given myself. And I was like, I want to do this. And then there was a lot of twists and turns in the way. I wanted to be a sex therapist, but I ended up being a sex coach. I could technically still be a sex therapist, but that's in a nutshell how I got here.
And so when it comes to your own journey, you're sort of unpacking that sexual shame, how long did that take for you to kind of come through that? Because I imagine if you spent sort of 16 years having all this messaging sort of given to you, it must have taken some time to sort of unpack that.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? I don't have any more shame around my sexual expression, but literally 5 years ago, I had this. Okay, hold on. Let me express this other thing and then I'll tell you that. So, I from the time I was 18 decided to leave the church and embark on this journey to the moment that I remember having sex and feeling confident and comfortable and empowered. It probably took me about 5 years. I
Okay.
remember when I was 23 years old, it was finally when I was starting to feel like, "Oh, okay, this is fine. I'm okay. This is great. This is part of who I am." And that was also the year I was able to, give myself a reliable orgasm, and, masturbation started to become a lot more comfortable. So
Mm.
it took me about 5 years. But, I mean, just 5 years ago, I noticed I was having a self-pleasure session, and, I noticed that, the blanket was on me all the way up to my neck, and I had
Okay.
a moment where I was like, "Well, I don't feel ashamed," but it was just, these pleasure practices that I've had from, when I was younger kind of still carry.
Yeah.
So that was interesting, the little moments like that that I still get till today, But
Yeah. It's amazing how those things can kind of carry through and you've sort of not really thought much about it. And then one day it's like, actually, hang on, like, where is that come from and why is it something that I'm doing?
yeah, why do I put the blanket all the way to my neck if I live by
Yeah.
myself?
Yeah.
What I mean?
Yeah.
What am
Like,
I scared is gonna happen,
yeah. And
Mhm.
so in your practice, when you're working with clients, what kind of messaging or sort of ideas around sex or sort of feelings of shame do you find come up for your clients?
So, interesting. One of 2 things, but it's mostly the latter. So, the first one is sex is bad, you shouldn't have sex, it's a sin, if you have sex before marriage, you'll go to hell. If you have sex, you'll get pregnant, right? So all these messages. And then the second one, which is the most common one, is nothing. They just
Okay.
received no information around sex. No one
Mm,
talked about it. It was just like this gigantic elephant in the room that no one wanted to address,
mm.
which, in my opinion, actually creates even more damage than the former.
I was about to say, I think sometimes an absence of conversation kind of functions as an idea or like functions, it creates meaning in and of itself because no one's talking about it. So it makes it seem like this is not something you address. This is not something you should feel comfortable talking about. And that then creates feelings of shame, I suppose.
1000%. Well, the thing about shame is that shame thrives in secrecy. Whenever there's dishonesty, whenever there's someone is hiding something, it's because shame is present, right? So when
Mm,
you simply decide not to talk about it, I mean, you're already saying this is so shameful, it's not even worth bringing it up,
mm.
right? And that sends a huge message to children when they're younger.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess that carries through into adulthood. And then those ideas start impacting the way that people are having sex, or maybe not having sex as well, because of those messages that they've carried through to adulthood. And so I think maybe my next question is how do you start to help people untangle those thoughts that they have to, I guess, have a healthier approach to sex and intimacy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, the first thing is we talk about it. Like, and I think is something that's super interesting. That I've just learned throughout my many years of doing this work is that the more I talk about things that are very uncomfortable in a matter of fact type of way, the more comfortable people get with it, right? So,
Mm,
for example, if I say, "Oh, look at the weather today. It's sunny and it's windy," right? Oh, wow, look at the clitoris. It has 5 to 8,000 nerve endings and it gives incredible orgasms when it's stimulated, right? It's like
yeah.
the tone that you use really creates an environment where it's like, oh, it's okay to talk about these things. Let's normalize this conversation. It doesn't have to be this like gigantic dark cloud that just came
Mm,
through, which a lot of my clients, when they come in, they're just like so scared. It's like they're so ashamed of what they experienced that they talk about it like that. So the first thing is like talking about it very matter of factly, I think already
mm,
creates that environment. And then literally just talking about it, right? Asking questions. And it really depends a lot on the client, right? So,
mm,
or the individual, because, for example, if someone comes to me and says, I feel so ashamed of my sexuality, I feel uncomfortable, I can't let myself go, right? I'm super in my head, whatever, whatever, right? So then we talk about it first. Like, okay, tell me when you feel uncomfortable. So it's, oh, okay, well, I feel super uncomfortable when my partner's going down on me, for example, performing oral. Okay, why does that make you uncomfortable? Well, I'm scared that I might smell or that it looks weird, right? So, for example, in that situation, now that we're talking about it, we have a better understanding of where it's coming from, right?
mm,
You're ashamed that it smells and looks weird. I have a hunch that you've never seen your vulva, one, right? And you probably aren't familiar with the smells that your vulva, right, like, gives. So once we talk about it and all these things come to light, then we're able to really go through what I like to say is that, like, there's 2 different, categories or aspects of sexual empowerment. It's the knowledge and the courage. So once
okay.
we talk about it and understand where the issue is, now we get to obtain knowledge. So, for example, if
Mm,
someone says, I'm insecure about what my vulva looks like, well, we got to look at your vulva then. Let's take out a mirror and look at her and get familiar with her smell, familiar with how she looks. So when
mm,
someone's going down on you, you don't feel insecure, right?
yeah.
Or you're like, I know exactly what you're doing. And then once you have that self knowledge, then all you need now is the courage to act upon that. And in
Mm,
this process, the shame just melts off, right?
mm,
And then ultimately, it's doing that a million times until it becomes experience. And then once it
mm.
becomes experience, it becomes confidence. But it takes doing the uncomfortable thing several times before it gets to the point of confidence. But that's the first step in at least removing the shame from the conversation.
Mm. I guess it's one of those things, right? Like you kind of have to rewire your thought patterns and kind of correct it over a period of time because
Mhm.
you can't just shift those beliefs that you have overnight, especially if they've, I guess, sort of crept in unconsciously. and you
Mhm.
sort of have just been absorbing these little pieces of information over a whole lifetime to try and, I guess, rewire the way that you feel about your body, about sex, about intimacy. It's a bit of a journey, and it's like a long-term investment really, isn't it?
100%. Yeah, definitely. It takes time, right?
Yeah.
I also find that in coaching, a lot of that time can be accelerated, right? Because
Mm.
when my clients come to me and say, "Oh, I'm so scared of doing this one thing." Well, guess what I have them do? I have them do that one thing,
Yeah.
right? So it's like this one thing that they've been avoiding for years, and now suddenly I'm telling them, "Okay, you're doing that this week." Like, that's an acceleration, right? Because then they,
Mm.
"Oh, there's nothing wrong with this. Like, I didn't die and I'm okay, and okay, let's do this again and see how it goes."
And it must also be nice having someone like you to speak to as kind of a safe space where it's, they're not having those conversations necessarily with their partner if they're not ready for that yet, but they can kind of have that conversation with you and work out how they feel and then what their plan is moving forward and then take that into practice and
Yeah.
having that like non-judgmental space with you to, I guess, like tease that out, if that makes sense.
100%. That's exactly what I tell my clients is I say the benefit of having a sex coach is that you get to practice with me first
Mm,
before you get to talk to your partner, right? So you get to tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like
mm,
tell me exactly how you feel. You practice it, you because also, I often joke that like I'm not an actual sex coach, I'm a communication coach because essentially a lot of people are just so scared to tell their partners the truth of how they
yeah.
feel, whether they like
Mm,
something or not, right? And those conversations are the ones that really create all of the transformation in your intimate life, right?
mm.
A lot of it is also like supporting my clients and how to discuss these things. So yeah, practicing with me is phenomenal. So then they can go and take that with their partner.
I think that's a really great kind of lead into my next question because I did want to ask you for because I've sort of seen on your social media that you work with a lot of women who maybe don't feel like comfortable expressing their needs and desires to a partner, and I wondered what what advice do you find yourself giving in in those situations, and how can someone start to feel more confident in expressing what they're looking for, what makes them feel good?
Okay. So this question is a very loaded one. And this is why. A lot of women, and it's not our fault, it's the unfortunate society that we live in a patriarchal society that has robbed us of our ability to listen to our intuition and trust our guts. So, a lot of women that find themselves in those situations are in either one of two situations, right? Or find themselves in one of two types of relationships. The first one is they're in a relationship with a safe person. That person is emotionally available. That person is kind. That person is encouraging them to explore their sexualities. They respect their boundaries. They want what's best for them. And they just simply have a personal block, a mental and emotional block, either from childhood or trauma or whatever, that gets in the way of them being able to fully show up in that sexual intimacy experience with that person, right?
Mm,
So that's one. And then the second type of relationship that those individuals, those women tend to find themselves in are I feel uncomfortable talking to my partner about these things. Well, there's been times where my partner hasn't respected my boundaries. My partner gets defensive when I tell them how I feel. My
mm,
partner isn't very emotionally available or attuned or wants to listen to me. They get annoyed when I talk about my feelings, right? And here's the thing, a woman needs to feel safe within herself and within her partnership, right? If a woman finds herself in the first relationship, now the journey becomes okay, how can you find safety within yourself? And how can we practice you opening yourself up so that your partner can be a soft landing for you,
mm,
right? But in the second relationship example that I gave, now we need to understand further okay, what does it mean for you to feel emotionally safe? Because our bodies can only respond to sexual intimacy when we are in a full state of relaxation. And this is especially true for women, right? When a woman is safe, she opens up, she flourishes, she becomes empowered and dynamic and magnetic and sensual, right? But if that layer of safety doesn't exist, she will continue to feel small, to hide herself, and to ignore her intuition.
Mm,
So, in those situations, the journey becomes, am I in a safe relationship?
mm,
Do I feel safe with my partner? Yes or no? Is that lack of safety coming from my partner, or is it coming from something within me? And
mm,
is my partner receptive to going on this journey with me? Right? Because then it turns into something else completely, right? Then it turns
mm,
into, okay, how can we achieve the emotional safety so that your body can relax enough so that finally it starts to respond to the sexual intimacy and then you can really open yourself up.
mm,
Now, the reason why a lot of people get scared about going on this journey is because a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times when women go on this journey of sexual empowerment, they realize, shit, I am not in a safe relationship. My partner
mm,
is not a safe person, and they don't have the desire to become a safe person. And that puts them in the situation where they either have to accept where they are or make the decision to leave a relationship that obviously is going to cause so much heartbreak, right?
mm.
And a lot of us aren't ready to really see the truth in our lives. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think there can sometimes be a certain sense of maybe comfortability in just sort of pushing those things away and, like, not addressing it if you don't want to. If you're not ready to, you're just like, "We're gonna put that in a box and put it to the side, and we're not gonna confront that for now." But then, like you say, if you don't have the emotional safety in the relationship, then you can't, after that, I guess, work on the next thing, which is communicating with them about what you need and what you desire and what you enjoy. So it's sort of like a building. It's like foundations, really, isn't it? Like foundations of a house, or you could call it. You need to have one before the next one.
It's funny that you say that because the first activity I do with my clients, I call it laying the foundation.
Oh, really? Okay.
And we need to like build a foundation so that we can understand like where we're going, right?
Mm,
And for me, the laying the foundation activity is talking about their goals and their
mm,
desires, right? Because so many individuals go into this journey and they're like, I just don't want to feel the way that I feel, but I don't exactly know where I'm going,
okay.
right?
Mm,
And that's challenging. We need to know where you're going so that we can understand how to get there, right?
mm,
It's like you use a GPS to get you from A to B because if you don't know how to get there, how are you supposed to get there? It's the same
mm.
thing with life, right? If you
Yeah.
want to have a healthy relationship, a strong sexual connection, um, a really grounded experience in your intimate life, it's important that you understand what that looks like.
So it sounds like the first kind of part of, like, your work with clients can be just helping them figure out what they're actually coming to see you for. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
the very, very, very first thing we do. It's like, what are your goals,
Mm,
right? And then what are your desires? What does this life that you desire look like, right?
mm,
And it's so funny because once we go on that journey, we realize that what we desire really isn't that grand. The desire could be, I just want to feel confident. I want to be able to
mm,
rip my clothes off and hop into bed and fuck my partner and it be amazing, which is
mm,
really not that like otherworldly, it's just the
mm.
journey to get there can
Yeah.
be challenging.
Yeah. Something I'm really interested in is, I saw there was a video you posted from a little while back saying that your number one sex tip used to be communication and now it's shifted. And I wondered if you could talk to us a bit about what your number one sex tip is now and why it's changed.
Yeah, that video went viral. Jesus Christ, everyone really it was kind of funny too because when I posted that video, it was like after a yoga class, I was walking home and I just had this like hit of inspiration. And I mean, you can tell I'm like sweating and I'm like you could tell I just got out of yoga, you know what I mean? I'm like armpits are hairy, hair is whatever. And I just hit record because I felt this inspiration, and I think this message just it resonated with so many people because I
Mm,
think that so many of us really are thirsty for this. So I used to say communication was my number one sex tip, right? And then I had a realization that communication goes nowhere if comprehension isn't reached, right? So comprehension is when you take action based on the communication that you were given, right? And so then I thought, oh, comprehension is my number one sex tip because you need comprehension in order to get, you need the action in order to be able to be successful, right? And understand and know that there's been a mutual understanding between all parties involved, right?
Mm.
But then I realized with a lot of the individuals that I work with, they communicate, there's some comprehension. But then what I realized is that what they were communicating wasn't always true,
Okay.
or what they were communicating was something that they themselves were unsure about.
Okay.
So then I realized that actually the number one sex tip that I have is authenticity. And not just authenticity, like relentless authenticity. And the reason why I say relentless authenticity is because we have two basic human needs as humans, authenticity and attachment. And Gabor Mate talks a lot about this, which I'm obsessed with his work. And when we're in relationships with people, our attachment systems oftentimes take over. And those attachment systems really make it challenging for us to show up authentically. But we can't have intimacy without authenticity. It's impossible to create that. And so I realized that really the journey here is how can someone be relentlessly authentic?
Mm.
Like, say what they want to say, do what they want to do, share what they
Mm.
want to share, really, really, really just speak absolute truth, right? Because that in itself is what's going to create the intimacy, because once you and the thing is, that's an internal journey, because I don't know if you're telling
Mm.
the truth, that's a journey with you and yourself, right? So when you can learn to be relentlessly authentic and then communicate from that space and reach comprehension, you're I mean, come on, that's the dream right there.
Mm. Out of curiosity, what's one thing that's helped you feel like you can be authentic?
Mm. Being a cheater.
Okay.
I in my 20s, the so the pendulum swing from one extreme to the other. I wanted to be a nun when I was a teenager, and then in my 20s, I just became a reckless sexual beast, essentially. I was not in my integrity. I was cheating on partners and being dishonest, and I mean, everything just came to a head when I was 27. I got caught by my then spouse, and my life completely fell apart. Like, my sexual habits led me to a very intense rock bottom.
Mm.
I lost my job, I lost my partner, I lost my self-respect and my dignity, and I wanted to die. I was just like, "I'm a piece of shit, I'm a monster, like, who's gonna love me?" And that actually threw me into a whole 'nother journey where I was in a program for sex and love addiction for 3.5 years, and through that program, I learned the importance of integrity.
Mm.
And the reason why I'm so passionate about this is because I know what it feels like to be in a relationship and not be authentic and not
Mm.
be your integrity, and let me tell you, the feeling of placing your head on your pillow at night with a guilty conscience is one of the shittiest feelings in the world, and the
Mm.
unfortunate truth is that many, many, many people are living that way because they're so scared of sharing their truth, and so what they do is they cheat, they lie, they manipulate, not because they're bad people, but because we as a society haven't been taught the importance of how to sit in discomfort,
Mm.
sit in distress enough for us to be able to reach a point of connection, right?
Mm.
And you have to sit in those uncomfortable feelings to reach that point of connection.
Mm.
So the irony is that that's what's helped me be more authentic, is knowing what it feels like to be very inauthentic.
Mm. And how do you sit in a feeling of discomfort and kind of like really just 'Cause I mean, that's even thinking about it makes me feel like, "Oh, that's quite I wouldn't even know how to do that."
Okay, funny actually. It's such a great question, literally right now. So, long story short, I had like a fling with this guy in January. But it was one of those flings that just cracked me open. Like I was like, this man came into my life and just like, I mean, I don't know if I've had the same impact on him, but he's had just a gigantic impact on me.
Wow.
I know. It was very heart-opening and beautiful, and literally today, I hadn't spoken to him in 6 weeks because I kinda told him that, like, I don't wanna continue communication if it's not gonna lead anywhere just because I could feel
Mm,
myself developing feelings, and I literally so today I got inspired to send him a very kind message because
mm,
I just had this moment where I'm like, if I run into him, I don't want energy to be weird. I want the energy
yeah.
to be okay. So I sent him this beautiful, thoughtful message like 15 minutes before I got onto this podcast or like a half hour before. And I put my phone down and I just sat there and I could feel the anxiety just overwhelm me.
Mm,
And I immediately wanted to scroll on YouTube. I wanted to put some music on. I wanted to archive the message. I wanted to delete the message so I wouldn't look at it. And I just literally sat there and I was like, I'm going to feel this. And I wanted to throw up. I still kind of want to throw up.
yeah.
Um,
You're doing well.
thank
You look
you.
very composed and put together, so I wouldn't have known.
Thank you. So, and I just sat there with it.
Mm,
And but you know what's helped me sit in this today? Um, and this is gonna sound so fucking cliche, but it's so fucking true. Meditation. I've
okay.
started developing like a daily meditation practice and a
Mm,
daily nighttime routine. I've only done it 2 days, but even in those 2 days, I'm like, my life is changing.
yeah.
Also, I've committed to journaling every day.
Okay.
So I think these like self-connection rituals really can support us in being like, what is present right now? What is here? And can I just sit with it? Right.
Mm,
Because now more than ever, we have access to so many distractions. And so, yeah, I would say daily rituals like that, like journaling, meditation, have supported me greatly. And helping me in just kind of like pay attention to what I'm experiencing and being able to act upon it.
mm.
So, yeah.
I think it's very, very easy, like you say, to have a feeling and then put something else over the top of it, whether that be scrolling or listening to music or watching a TV show. It is so easy now to just cover up those emotions to, I guess, save them for a later date. And then you don't actually end up sort of sitting with them or dealing with them or acknowledging them, and they just kind of hide away in your body. But I've heard really good things about meditation, so it's interesting that you say that, because I keep hearing people say like it is um, like transformational. So maybe I'll give that a go tonight and start my meditation journey. I don't know.
Well, I'm gonna tell you this. I respect people that have like a whole thing around it because there are people that like, they sit down crisscross applesauce on their yoga mat, they light
Mm,
incense, and then they meditate for 20 minutes and they close I can't do that shit.
mm.
I finally found out what works for me though, and I'm really grateful for it. So literally when I wake up in the morning, I open my eyes, I wake up, and then I close my eyes and I take deep breaths until my mind is clear.
Okay.
I kid you not, it takes me 3 to 5 minutes. It's a very simple,
Wow.
short practice,
Mm,
very intentional.
mm.
So, I do, like, just some breathing until my mind is clear, and then I have a conversation with my spirit guides, I have a conversation with the universe, I ask the universe what they want of me, and then I write in my gratitude journal, and then at some point in the day, I journal. And it's been fucking awesome. Like,
Mm.
I'm telling you, I haven't felt this at peace even through the anxiety of like, "Oh my god, I sent this text message." Um, but the peace that I've been experiencing has been just, fucking phenomenal. It's
And
so
also,
yummy.
I think too. I think, you can never live a life where you're not ever gonna get anxious, right? And I think that the sense of, I guess, achievement or growth comes from being able to do what you did today and actually just sit with it and be present with the feeling rather than suppressing it. Because that's all we can hope to do, right? Is when we do feel a negative emotion, whether that be anxiety or fear or hurt or jealousy or whatever it is, being able to actually just sit with it and trust yourself to kind of work through that as you need to, rather than trying to find some external source to, I guess, occupy your mind instead. So yeah, I think it's yeah.
There's it's oh my god, okay, the best way that I could describe the feeling of self-attunement is yummy.
Mm,
It's so yummy to be connected with yourself.
yeah.
And I've been seeking this for a really long time, and I'm guilty of being addicted to TV. I'm guilty of being addicted to scrolling and asking ChatGPT about my every move, if this was
Mm,
a good idea or a bad idea. And just recently I was like, I want to reconnect with myself in a powerful way, and the universe is kind of lining itself up. So for Christmas, I was with my family, so I didn't really have a reason to be around my phone. Like, I
mm.
figured, well, I'm with my family, these are the most important people in my life, and I turned my phone off for 48 hours.
Oh my goodness.
And it was so fucking awesome. Like, I was like, "This is the best." Like,
Yeah.
wow. And since Christmas, I've been seeking that same peace,
Mm,
and I think that these rituals have really supported me in that. And one more thing I'll say about this, something that's helped me, the prayer, so, like, the meditation, the prayer, the gratitude, the journaling.
mm,
And I heard this in a 12-step program and it resonated. It said, God first, me second, everyone else third. So when you start your day, it's like, okay, connect with self and God, connect with me by journaling, and then I can go on my phone and deal with the world around me.
mm. So, thinking about how you grew up and then how you left the church when you were 16, and I guess how maybe, part of that upbringing affected your experience of maybe sense of self and attitudes towards sex. How has that shifted for you now? Like, do you have a more positive relationship with spirituality or faith? And like, how does that look for you at this moment in time?
Oh, it's such a good question. Yeah, I rejected everything that had to do with God. I was a hardcore atheist from 18 to like, yeah, till 8 from 18 to like 27. I was just like, fuck God, fuck Jesus, fuck the church, fuck all of this. Like, this is all bullshit. And then when I got into 12 step, because the thing about 12 step program is that they encourage you to develop an idea of a higher power to your understanding. So it can literally be anything. Like
Mm,
this remote could be my higher power. I could be like, okay, this is my higher power, right?
mm,
And the reason why they do that is because the 12 step program's goal is to develop a spiritual awakening. And it's also learning the art of surrender. So if
mm,
I say, "All right, remote control, like, you're my higher power. I'm gonna give this to you and you figure it out because I'm not doing this. You take the wheel and I have faith that you'll take care of it," right? And so relearning faith from that perspective really supported me in developing my own understanding of a higher power, one
mm,
that's not a man with a beard in the clouds judging me because I had an orgasm, you know what I'm
mm,
saying?
mm,
And my higher power is someone who is the universe. Well, it's the universe, right? The universe. I say God. Sometimes I say universe or spirit guides. But my understanding of a higher power now, or like spirit universe, is this deep sense that we're not alone,
mm,
this connection to something that's bigger. And also my higher power adores and loves my sexuality and celebrates me. And like
mm.
my higher power gifted me my clitoris, which is the one little powerhouse I have in my body that all she wants to do is give me orgasms. That's
Yeah,
literally higher function, you know?
yeah.
And so, I'm so grateful. I can't say enough wonderful things about SLAA, the program that I was in, because it gave me my spirituality back because I really did miss my relationship with God. I just
Mm,
didn't wanna believe in a God that was shameful
mm,
and punishing, right?
mm.
So, yeah, that's how that happened.
I imagine that, in all those years, you would have, I guess, learned a lot of things about sexuality and intimacy that maybe transformed the way that you saw those things. But I'd be curious if you could share with our listeners maybe one thing that really stands out to you, or one thing that you really are glad that your older self knows compared to your younger self in terms of sex and intimacy.
Mm. Well, this is something new, something I just learned, so I guess this is a good one to express. I just started doing IFS therapy. Are you familiar with that? Internal
No.
family systems. Oh my god, it is the tits.
Okay,
Part
tell me about it.
Parts work therapy is changing my life. It is incredible. So parts work therapy is where you meet different parts of yourself. And those different parts, it's almost like think of it like we all have multiple personalities, and those multiple personalities take over at different times of our lives. And they're there to like support us or to tell us something or to protect us in some way,
Mm,
right? And so through my very first session in IFS, which I literally had one session, I feel like I'm a completely different person. I've had two now, but like after that one session, I was like, my life has changed. What I discovered in that session through this whole process is that my body freaks out when there's no clarity in
okay.
dynamics. And so, what that looks like is if I'm sexually intimate with someone, let's say it's a one night stand or whatever, right? If I have no clarity about what the relationship is, what the boundaries are, what is happening right now, my body goes haywire.
Mm,
And from what I know about psychology, this is a true phenomenon for all humans. And this is the thing I'm most grateful that I've learned about sexual intimacy is that before entering a sexually intimate experience, it is vital, essential, required to have clarity around that dynamic. So, for example, let's say, I match with someone on the app. To have those intentions be known upfront. Hey, I'm
mm,
only available for casual sex. What that looks like is we'll talk, we'll hang out, we'll hook up. It'll be lighthearted and fun. I don't want to text every day. I don't want to go on dates, and I don't want a deep emotional connection.
mm,
Okay, great. We have the clarity. Are we both on board? Yes, fantastic. Your body relaxes because it knows what to
mm,
expect.
mm,
So or the opposite, you're like, "I want a commitment. I want a deep emotional connection. I want to text you every day. I wanna build something with someone." And if everyone's on the same page, fantastic, right?
mm,
So that's the biggest thing that I've learned recently that I'm so grateful for is that the more clarity I have with the people I engage with and with myself, right? Making sure that my intentions are in alignment with what I desire, the less anxiety and stress I feel and the more
mm,
safety, calm, and all those yummy feelings I feel.
mm. I think something I'd be interested to ask, kind of following on from that, is, and this relates to both, maybe entering a new kind of relationship with someone or expressing your needs and desires with a partner when you're in like a sexually intimate moment. If someone's worried about how someone else is going to receive it, whether the other person's feelings might be hurt, or they might be rejected, or they might feel a bit judged, what would you want people to know, or what advice would you have?
Yeah. So the first one is learning how to say it, which, by the way, this is my specialty. I have a free workbook called Speak Your Desires, which you can grab directly from my website. And I'm actually working on a course to teach people about this called Speak Your Desires
Amazing.
the Guided Experience. So maybe by the time
Oh.
this podcast is out, that course will be out too. But it's
Mm,
only $47 and it's going to change your life. Like
mm,
it's going to change. It's a game changer. Um, so through that process that I teach, I literally teach you how to speak your desires step by step, giving you prompts on how to express those things, right? Now, going back to what we talked about before, right? The two basic human needs, the attachment and the authenticity, right? This is where it comes into play because what you're saying is what happens if they lose the attachment when they start becoming authentic, right? And that's
Mm,
that people have. It's like if I become authentic, I might lose the attachment, and that's scary, right? So what I would say is making sure that everyone involved, right, is on board 110%. And to the receiver of that, it's the stress tolerance. It's learning how to sit in the uncomfortable experience,
mm,
learning how to listen, learning how to process it, and then learning how to express it. And the danger that couples can run into, that I've seen many couples run into, is if they wait too long to have these conversations and don't have them at the beginning of their relationship, they
mm,
one day realize that they're not compatible,
mm.
because that's another thing that can happen, right? Is once you open this can of worms and you realize, "Oh,
Yeah,
shit, we're actually not on the same page."
yeah.
Like, what does that mean for our relationship? So, yeah, learning distress tolerance, learning how to speak authentically, and in my opinion, choosing authenticity over attachment as an adult is always the best way to go because your authenticity will naturally attract your tribe, and you will
Mm,
never be alone when you're fully authentic. But
yeah.
if you choose attachment, essentially what you're saying is I'm choosing self-abandonment, self-betrayal,
Mm,
and that's always going to lead to inner chaos.
That makes so much sense, and I think especially when you're thinking about it in terms of, like, a long-term relationship, whether that be romantic or, like, with a group of friends, if you're putting yourself in a situation where you're kind of compromising what you believe in for the attachment, like you say, then that is gonna cause a lot of sort of, like, internal chaos, and you're not ever gonna feel, I guess, truly content because 'cause you're not being yourself, and you're not accepted for being yourself. Um, I think I've got two more questions. The first one is there anything that I haven't asked that you would like to share or that you would like our listeners to know?
Honestly, I feel pretty content and happy with all of the questions that you've asked. I
Okay.
really am grateful that we touched upon these subjects, 'cause I'm very, very passionate about them.
And so for our listeners, if they're keen to learn more or maybe to have access to your workshop that you're putting together, like when it comes out, or if they just want to see what you've got already when it comes to speaking about your desires, where can they find more about you and the work that you do?
Yeah, my website is www.jocelynsilva.com, JocelynSilva, and my Instagram is at I am Jocelyn Silva. And
Amazing.
yeah, that's the best way to find me.
Perfect. Well, I'll make sure to put the links to your work in the episode description as well. So anyone who's listening can click on that and find that as well easily if they would like to. And thank you so much, Justin, for your time today. It was so lovely to speak with you.
Thank you.
And I think we covered such an amazing like range of topics and all things that I think for listeners and for myself as well is nice to kind of go away and reflect on how these ideas sort of apply to our own lives and maybe sort of what areas we might like to work on or feel that we need to work on when it comes to ideas around shame or desire or expressing our needs and our boundaries. So thank you so much.
Thank you. This was a great conversation. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.